In a modest auto repair shop on the outskirts of town, Tom Martinez spends his nights working by lamplight, transforming an old Mercedes coupe into something extraordinary. His skilled hands craft specialized controls and a custom lift system, though he can barely afford the parts. During the day, he knows her only as Ms. Sarah, a quiet woman in a wheelchair who dreams of driving again. What he doesn't know is that she's Sarah Thorne, the reclusive tech heiress worth billions, traveling incognito to find something money can't buy, genuine kindness. While Tom's creditors circle and bills pile up, he pours his heart into every weld and wire, determined to give one person back their freedom. But what happens when she returns to test drive his creation? What will this lonely billionaire do when she discovers true compassion in the most unexpected place? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun hadn't yet risen when Tom Martinez's key turned in the shop's rusty lock. Dawn's first light caught the faded lettering above, Martinez and Father Auto Repair, where the ampersand now tilted at a crooked angle. Tom touched the sign gently as he passed beneath it, a morning ritual as familiar as his first cup of coffee. Inside, the air carried the comforting scent of motor oil and metal, mingled with the mustiness of the aging building. Tom flicked on the fluorescent lights, their steady hum a welcome companion after another sleepless night. His workspace, though worn, spoke of meticulous organization, tools arranged with precision, each surface clean despite decades of use. Dad always said, a clean shop means a clear mind, he murmured, running his hand along the smooth surface of his father's old workbench. The wood, polished by generations of careful hands, still held the warmth of memory. 25 years had passed since he'd first watched his father's fingers dance across engine parts, teaching him the symphony of mechanical repair. The wall clock read 5:45 a.m. Tom pulled out his ledger, the pages dog-eared and coffee-stained, numbers that refused to add up properly no matter how many times he revised them. 3 overdue bills lay beneath, electricity, parts supplier, and worst of all, the bank notice. He'd have to figure something out soon, but for now, there were cars waiting. His first customer arrived precisely at 7, right as Maya burst through the side door, her backpack slung over one shoulder. At 16, she was the spitting image of her mother, same dark curls, same determined set to her jaw. "Dad, you promised you wouldn't pull another all-nighter," she scolded, dropping a paper bag on his desk. "I brought you breakfast, real food, not just coffee." Tom smiled, catching the familiar scent of his daughter's homemade egg sandwiches. "You're supposed to be the kid here, remember? Someone has to be the responsible one," Maya replied, but her eyes sparkled with affection. She glanced at the Mercedes in the corner, the one he'd been working on after hours. "How's the special project coming along?" Before Tom could answer, Mr. Peterson's booming voice filled the shop. "Tommy, tell me you've got my Buick sorted out." "Right on schedule, Mr. P," Tom called back, already moving toward the elderly man's cherished vintage Buick. The car had been his father's first restoration project back in '82, and now Tom maintained it with the same care. "Maya, can you get Mr. Peterson some coffee while I finish up?" The morning unfolded like countless others, a parade of familiar faces and faithful customers, each bringing their mechanical troubles to the one man in town they trusted to make things right. Tom's hands moved with practiced precision, diagnosing problems by sound and touch as much as sight. Every car that passed through his shop carried a story, and he knew them all. Between jobs, his eyes kept drifting to the Mercedes. The custom controls were coming along, but parts weren't cheap, and his supplier was getting anxious about his outstanding balance. Still, something about the project pulled at him, demanding his best work. The woman, Ms. Sarah, had appeared 3 weeks ago, her wheelchair-accessible van driven by her assistant. Her request had been simple: transform the classic coupe into something she could drive independently. "Martinez and Father always finds a way," he'd promised, echoing words his father had said countless times. The price he'd quoted was far below what the work was worth, but something in her eyes, a mixture of hope and resignation, had stopped him from naming a higher figure. Late afternoon brought Roy from the bank, his tie too tight and his smile too practiced. "Tom, we need to talk about the loan payments." "Roy, I know things are behind, but I've got some promising work lined up," Tom began, but Roy's raised hand cut him off. "The bank's been patient, Tom. Your father was a good man, and everyone respected him, but business is business. We need to see significant movement on this debt within 30 days, or we'll have to explore other options." After Roy left, Tom sat at his desk, head in his hands. Maya found him there an hour later when she returned from school. "Dad, what's wrong?" He looked up at his daughter, trying to smile. "Just grown-up stuff, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." Maya perched on the edge of his desk, her expression serious beyond her years. "I'm not a little kid anymore. I know things are tough. Maybe I could pick up some hours at the diner after school, help out a little." "Absolutely not," Tom said firmly. "Your job is school, period. I promised your mom before she passed that you'd get to college, and that's exactly what's going to happen." Maya started to protest, but the rumble of an engine outside interrupted them. Tom recognized the sound immediately, Ms. Sarah's van, right on schedule for her weekly progress check. "We'll talk later," he promised Maya, already reaching for his jacket. "Right now, I've got work to do." As he stepped out into the gathering dusk, Tom squared his shoulders. The shop's problems would wait. Right now, someone needed his help, and that's what Martinez and father had always been about, helping people get back on the road, wherever that road might lead them. The sign creaked gently in the evening breeze, that crooked ampersand catching the last rays of sunlight. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for tonight, there was work to be done by lamplight, crafting something extraordinary for someone who dreamed of driving again. Sarah Thorne watched the world pass by through tinted windows as her van approached Martinez and Father Auto Repair. She'd spent the past hour rehearsing her story again, Sarah Webb, former teacher, living modestly on disability insurance. The lies felt heavy on her tongue, but necessity had taught her their worth. Trust, she'd learned, was harder to find than venture capital. The Mercedes 380 SL had been her father's pride and joy. In the 3 years since the accident that took her mobility and him, the car had sat untouched in her garage, a beautiful ghost gathering dust until now. "Ms. Webb, are you sure about this place?" her assistant James asked as he maneuvered the van into the parking lot. "I could recommend several specialized modification shops in, this is the one," Sarah interrupted softly. She'd researched every shop within a 100-mile radius, but something about Martinez and father had called to her. Perhaps it was the reviews. Not the most numerous, but heartfelt testimonials spanning decades. Or maybe it was the photo on their modest website, Tom Martinez, sleeves rolled up, explaining something to an elderly customer with genuine warmth in his eyes. The shop's exterior matched its online presence, unpretentious but well-maintained. Sarah smoothed her simple cotton dress, checked that her grandmother's old watch was the only jewelry she wore, and nodded to James to help her with the wheelchair. Tom Martinez emerged from the shop as they approached, wiping his hands on a red shop rag. His eyes met Sarah's directly, no awkward glances at the wheelchair, no excessive solicitude, just a straightforward, "Good evening, Miss Sarah. Ready to see how your car is coming along?" "Please," she smiled, feeling the familiar flutter of anticipation. Each visit revealed something new about the transformation taking place under his careful hands. Inside, the Mercedes sat in a pool of overhead light, its classic lines unchanged but its purpose slowly evolving. Tom wheeled her right up to the driver's side, explaining his latest modifications with quiet enthusiasm. "See this bracket here? I custom fabricated it myself. The hydraulic lift system will mount here, giving you clear access to the seat while maintaining the car's balance. I had to modify the frame a bit, but she's still solid as ever." Sarah leaned forward, genuinely fascinated. "You actually made that piece?" My father believed in fabricating what you couldn't find, Tom explained, a note of pride in his voice. He said any fool could order parts from a catalog, but a true mechanic creates solutions. He demonstrated the mock-up of the hand controls, his movements precise and patient. Sarah found herself watching his hands, strong, capable hands that spoke of years of skilled labor. They reminded her of her father's hands, always slightly stained with ink from his engineering drawings. The challenge, Tom continued, is integrating everything smoothly without compromising the car's character. These old Mercedes, they have a soul to them. I don't want to lose that. You sound like my father, Sarah said before she could stop herself. He used to say machines have personalities. Smart man, Tom smiled. Was he a mechanic too? Sarah hesitated, the truth pressing against her carefully constructed story. An engineer, she said finally. He passed away a few years ago. Something in Tom's expression shifted, a flash of shared understanding. I lost my father 5 years back. I still find myself turning to ask his opinion sometimes. The moment stretched between them, quiet and genuine. Sarah felt the familiar guilt of her deception twist in her stomach. Here was a man who spoke truth as naturally as breathing, while she calculated every word. Their conversation was interrupted by quick footsteps and the appearance of a teenage girl, Tom's daughter, Maya, Sarah recalled from previous visits. The girl carried a textbook and wore a slightly harried expression. Dad, I hate to interrupt, but I'm stuck on this physics problem, and it's due tomorrow. Go ahead, Sarah said quickly. I should be heading back anyway. But Maya's eyes had fallen on the Mercedes, particularly the custom bracket Tom had been explaining. Wait, is that a modified Class 1 lever system? We're studying mechanical advantage in physics. Tom laughed. Maybe we can help each other out here. Ms. Sarah, would you mind if Maya took a look? It might help with her homework. The next 15 minutes were spent with Maya sketching force diagrams while Tom explained how the lift system would work. Sarah found herself contributing almost despite herself, her engineering knowledge slipping out in carefully measured doses. You know a lot about mechanics, Maya observed, looking up from her notebook. I had a good teacher in my father, Sarah replied, feeling Tom's thoughtful gaze on her. Later, as James helped her back into the van, Tom walked alongside her wheelchair. Next week, we'll be ready to test the lift system. Nothing fancy yet, just making sure the geometry works for you. Sarah nodded, fighting the urge to tell him everything, to explain that money wasn't an issue, that he could order any part, hire any help he needed. Instead, she watched him standing in the growing darkness, that red shop rag still in his hands, the weight of his responsibilities visible in the set of his shoulders. As the van pulled away, Sarah took out her phone and pulled up the dossier her private investigator had compiled on Martinez and Father Auto Repair. The latest bank records showed a business teetering on the edge, a proud legacy threatened by mounting debt. She stared at the numbers until they blurred, remembering the genuine warmth of Tom's smile, the careful precision of his work, the way he'd included her in Maya's impromptu physics lesson. James, she said finally, I need you to set up a meeting with my financial team tomorrow. Of course, Miss Thorne. May I ask why? Sarah watched the shop disappear in the side mirror, that old sign still barely visible in the gathering dusk. Because sometimes, she said softly, the best investments aren't listed on any stock exchange. Late into the night, Tom sat at his father's old drafting table, the surface illuminated by a single articulated lamp. Scattered around him were dozens of hand-drawn sketches, detailed technical drawings showing every aspect of the Mercedes's transformation. His father had taught him that proper planning prevented poor performance, and this project demanded nothing less than perfection. The design for the hand controls was proving particularly challenging. Traditional push-pull systems wouldn't work well with the Mercedes classic interior, too clunky, too obvious. Tom wanted something elegant, something that would look like it had always belonged there. He picked up his father's old mechanical pencil, its brass body worn smooth from decades of use, and began another sketch. This time, he imagined the controls flowing naturally from the steering column, like an extension of the car's original design. His mind wandered to Sarah's hands, noting how she managed her wheelchair with subtle movements. The controls needed to match that intuitive grace. A soft knock interrupted his concentration. Maya stood in the doorway, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. "It's past midnight, Dad," she said, setting 1 mug beside him. "You know what Mom used to say about your midnight engineering sessions." Tom smiled, accepting the coffee. "Nothing good happens after midnight except inspiration. Your mother always did understand me too well." Maya pulled up a chair, studying the drawings. "These are beautiful, like something from those old engineering textbooks in the office. Your grandfather taught me that a good drawing is like a road map. It shows you where you're going and how to get there," Tom said, pointing to his latest sketch. "See how this lever integrates with the steering column? The trick is making it feel natural, like it's part of the car's soul. Is that why you're putting in all these extra hours, to make it perfect?" Maya asked. Tom set down his pencil, considering his answer. "You know how some customers just touch you? There's something about Ms. Sarah, the way she looks at that car, like it's more than just metal and chrome, like it's a piece of herself she lost and wants back." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "I noticed that too. When she was helping me with my physics homework, the way she explained things, it reminded me of my teachers who really love what they do." The next morning brought fresh challenges. Tom's parts supplier, Eddie, showed up personally instead of sending his usual delivery driver. "Tom, we need to talk about your account," Eddie began, shuffling uncomfortably. "You're 3 months behind, and these special orders for the Mercedes job, I know, Eddie. I'm good for it, I swear. This job will help put things right," Tom said. Eddie looked around the shop, his eyes lingering on the faded sign outside. "Your father was my friend, Tom. He gave me my first break when I started my business, but I've got my own bills to pay." Tom felt the weight of his father's legacy pressing down on him. 2 weeks, Eddie. That's all I need. The adaptive controls are almost ready for testing." Eddie sighed, pulling out his notebook. 2 weeks, but I'll need something today, Tom, whatever you can manage." After scraping together what he could from his personal account, Tom returned to the Mercedes. The morning light streamed through the shop windows, catching the car's silver paint and making it glow. He ran his hand along its flank, feeling the perfect curves that had made the 380 SL a legend. "All right, old girl," he murmured. "Let's make you dance again." The day passed in a blur of precise measurements and careful modifications. Tom worked with focused intensity, each movement deliberate and measured. By late afternoon, the basic framework for the hand controls was taking shape. Sarah arrived for her regular check-in just as Tom was testing the initial range of motion. She watched silently as he demonstrated the prototype system, her eyes following every movement. "It's different from what I expected," she said finally. "Most adaptive controls I've seen are more obvious." Tom nodded. "I wanted something that would honor the car's heritage while giving you back the control you need. These controls will be an extension of your hands, as natural as the original pedals were to your feet." Sarah wheeled closer, reaching out to touch the prototype lever. Her fingers traced the curved metal with surprising familiarity. "The ergonomics are perfect," she said softly, then caught herself. "I mean, it looks very comfortable." Tom filed away that moment of expertise, adding it to the growing list of little inconsistencies he'd noticed. But something held him back from asking questions. Everyone had their reasons for keeping parts of themselves hidden, he understood that better than most. Instead, he focused on showing her the next phase of modifications. "Once we've got the hand controls perfected, we'll start on the lift system. I've designed it to be nearly invisible when not in use, just a subtle panel that flows with the car's lines." As they discussed the details, Tom noticed how Sarah's entire demeanor changed when talking about the technical aspects of the project. Her eyes lit up with understanding, and her suggestions were invariably insightful. It was like watching someone slowly come alive, piece by piece, with each visit to the shop. By the time Sarah left that evening, Tom had filled several more pages with notes and refinements to his designs. The project was taking shape, becoming something more than just another job. It was becoming a promise, not just to Sarah, but to himself and his father's memory, a promise that Martinez and Father Auto Repair could still work miracles, one careful modification at a time. In her penthouse apartment, Sarah sat in her state-of-the-art wheelchair, staring at the wall of screens displaying Thorne Technologies' global operations. Market projections, development timelines, and acquisition proposals scrolled endlessly, demanding decisions worth millions. But her thoughts kept drifting back to a humble auto repair shop and the honest eyes of a mechanic who saw only Ms. Sarah, the former teacher. "Your 3 p.m. board meeting starts in 10 minutes, James reminded her, setting down a fresh cup of tea. "Shall I connect you remotely?" Sarah wheeled away from the screens. "Cancel it. Tell them I'm conducting field research for our adaptive technology division." It wasn't entirely a lie. Every visit to Martinez and Father taught her something about practical accessibility that her R&D team's focus groups had missed. Tom's intuitive approach to the Mercedes modifications had already inspired 3 patent applications, filed quietly through subsidiary companies. She moved to the window, her reflection ghosting against the city skyline. The simple cotton dress she wore to the shop hung in her closet, a costume for a role she was finding increasingly difficult to play. Beside it, her usual designer wardrobe seemed like it belonged to another person entirely. The accident had changed everything. 3 years of surgeries and rehabilitation had taught her that money couldn't fix everything, couldn't make doctors work miracles. But it had also shown her how wealth shaped people's reactions, the careful sympathy, the calculated helpfulness, the constant awareness of her status. Even before her disability, her father had understood. In his last moments, trapped in their ruined car, he had squeezed her hand and whispered, "Remember, Sarah girl, true worth isn't in what we own, but in what we create for others." She'd built Thorne Technologies' adaptive technology division in his memory. But somewhere along the way, spreadsheets and profit margins had replaced the pure joy of engineering she'd shared with him, until she'd found Martinez and Father. She pulled up the latest report from her private investigator on her tablet. Tom's financial situation was worse than she'd initially realized. The bank was preparing to foreclose, and his parts supplier was on the verge of cutting him off. Yet, he'd spent his own money on premium materials for her car, choosing quality over profit margins. Her wheelchair hummed softly as she moved to her private workshop, where a duplicate set of Tom's hand-controlled designs lay on her own drafting table. She'd spent hours analyzing them, marveling at their elegant simplicity. His instinctive understanding of ergonomics matched anything her highly paid design team had produced. "James," she called, making a decision, "have legal draw up preliminary papers for a small business acquisition, and contact our friends at First National about acquiring a specific loan portfolio." "The auto shop?" James asked carefully. He'd worked with her long enough to read her intentions. "Not an acquisition," Sarah corrected. "An investment. But keep it quiet. I need to understand something first." "And what's that, Ms. Thorne?" Sarah touched the simple mechanical pencil sketch showing Tom's innovative lift system design. "I need to know if someone can still see the real me underneath all these layers I've built, if kindness can be genuine when status and wealth aren't part of the equation." James stepped closer, his voice gentle. "And if Mr. Martinez passes this test?" Sarah looked up, remembering the way Tom's eyes lit up when explaining his modifications, the pride in his voice when speaking of his father, his patient encouragement of Maya's curiosity. "Then maybe I'll finally find someone who sees Sarah first and Thorne second, someone who understands that some things are worth more than money." She turned back to the city lights, her fingers tracing the worn armrest of her wheelchair, the one she used at the shop, deliberately chosen for its simplicity. For now, though, she was just Ms. Sarah, trying to reclaim a piece of herself through the magic worked in a humble garage by honest hands. The stack of unpaid bills on Tom's desk had grown thick enough to cast a shadow. Final notice, stamps blazed an angry red across most of them, each one a ticking clock counting down to disaster. He'd been juggling accounts for months, robbing Peter to pay Paul, but now there weren't even pennies left to juggle. The morning's mail had brought the worst news yet, a formal notice from the bank announcing their intent to initiate foreclosure proceedings. 30 days. After 3 generations, Martinez and Father Auto Repair could disappear in just 30 days. "Morning, Mr. Martinez." Carlo's cheerful voice cut through Tom's dark thoughts. The teenager had been coming by every morning for weeks, watching Tom work on the Mercedes while waiting for his school bus. "How's the lift system coming along?" Tom managed a smile, tucking the notices into his drawer. "Making progress, Carlo. Want to take a look?" Carlo's eyes lit up as Tom showed him the latest modifications. The boy had a natural mechanical aptitude that reminded Tom of Maya at that age. "See how this bracket distributes the weight? Engineering isn't just about making things work, it's about making them work gracefully, like a dance." Carlo nodded, understanding immediately. "My abuela says, the best machines have rhythm." "Your grandmother's a wise woman," Tom said, demonstrating the smooth motion of the prototype lift. Every part working in harmony with every other part. If only his finances could work so harmoniously. The parts for Sarah's car had eaten deeply into his emergency reserves, but he couldn't bring himself to regret the quality of materials he'd chosen. Some things you simply couldn't compromise on. The morning rush brought its usual parade of minor repairs and oil changes, bread and butter work that kept the lights on, or used to, before parts costs had skyrocketed and customers had started stretching their maintenance intervals to save money. By afternoon, even his most loyal customers could sense something was wrong. Mrs. Henderson, who'd been bringing her Volvo to the shop since Tom's father's time, lingered after paying her bill. "Tommy," she said softly, "I was talking with the ladies at the bridge club. We've heard rumors about the bank." She pressed an envelope into his hand. "It's not much, but we all pitched in. Consider it an advance on future repairs." Tom's throat tightened as he felt the envelope's weight. "Mrs. Henderson, I can't." "You can, and you will," she interrupted firmly. "Your father helped us all out when times were tough. Now it's our turn." The envelope contained nearly $2,000 in cash, a generous gesture that touched his heart but barely dented the mountain of debt he faced. Still, it reminded him that Martinez and Father had always been more than just a business, it was part of the community's fabric. Later, while replacing a timing belt, Tom heard Maya's voice raised in argument with someone out front. He emerged from under the hood to find Roy from the bank standing in the office, his tie as perfectly knotted as ever. "The timeline isn't negotiable, Tom," Roy was saying. "The bank has been more than patient." "Patient?" Maya interrupted, her voice sharp with teenage indignation. "My dad works harder than anyone I know. He's helped half the people in this town keep their cars running when they couldn't afford repairs elsewhere." "Maya," Tom said quietly. "Homework time." She started to protest but recognized his tone. With a final glare at Roy, she grabbed her backpack and retreated to the office. "She's right about one thing," Roy said after she'd gone. "You do good work, Tom. But good work isn't enough anymore. The bank needs hard numbers, not goodwill." After Roy left, Tom found himself standing before his father's old tool chest. Each drawer contained precision instruments acquired over a lifetime of work, tools that had built this business from the ground up. The thought of them being sold off in a bankruptcy sale made his stomach turn. The Mercedes sat silently in its bay, half-completed modifications gleaming under the shop lights. Tom ran his hand along its sleek flank, feeling the cool metal beneath his fingers. The car represented everything Martinez and Father stood for: quality work, innovative solutions, and the simple human dignity of helping someone regain their independence. "What would you do, Dad?" he whispered to the empty shop. But the only answer was the quiet ticking of cooling engines and the distant sound of Maya's pencil scratching against paper as she worked on her homework, trusting him to keep their world from falling apart. The hydraulic system wasn't cooperating. Tom stood back from the Mercedes, wiping sweat from his forehead with his sleeve as he studied the partially installed lift mechanism. Something wasn't right. The motion was jerky, unpredictable. For anyone else, it might have been good enough, but not for this project, not for Sarah. The shop was quiet, the kind of silence that only exists in the deep hours of night. A half-empty cup of coffee had gone cold on his workbench, and the clock on the wall showed just past midnight. The prototype lift arm hung suspended over the driver's seat like a mechanical question mark. "Talk to me," Tom murmured to the car, an old habit learned from his father. "What am I missing?" He played the lift through its motion again, watching the hydraulic lines flex and stretch. The problem revealed itself in subtle vibrations, micro-shudders that meant resistance where there should be smooth flow. Tom pulled out his father's old notebook, its pages yellow with age and spotted with oil stains. Among the handwritten notes and diagrams, he found what he was looking for, a section on hydraulic system harmonics. His father had written, "Remember, fluid wants to flow like water in a stream. If it fights you, you're trying to make it go somewhere it doesn't want to go." The answer hit him like a bolt of lightning. He'd been thinking about the lift system as a mechanical problem, but it was really about flow dynamics. The hydraulic lines needed to follow natural curves, not the angular paths he'd originally designed. Working with renewed energy, Tom began redesigning the hydraulic routing. He curved the lines gracefully around existing structures, like a river finding its path through a landscape. Each bend and transition was carefully calculated to maintain constant pressure without restriction. "Dad would love this," he whispered, making another adjustment. The solution was elegant in its simplicity, no extra parts needed, just a better understanding of how things wanted to work naturally. As he worked, Tom's mind wandered to Sarah's latest visit. She had watched him demonstrate the original prototype with such focused attention, her eyes following the movement of each component. There had been something in her expression, not just interest, but understanding, like she could see the mathematics behind the motion. The new design took shape under his hands. By 3 a.m., Tom had completely reimagined the hydraulic system. The lift arm now moved with liquid grace, rising and falling in one smooth motion. He tested it repeatedly, making minor adjustments until the action was perfect. But the hydraulics were only part of the challenge. The hand controls needed to work in harmony with the lift system, creating a seamless transition from wheelchair to driver's seat. Tom found himself thinking about how Sarah managed her wheelchair, the efficient economy of her movements, the way she'd adapted to her circumstances with quiet determination. The answer came to him as he was sketching another design variation. The controls needed to adapt to her, not the other way around. Instead of a fixed position, he could create an adjustable interface that would find its optimal placement for Sarah's natural hand positions. Dawn was breaking when Maya found him, surrounded by technical drawings and prototype parts. She took in the scene, the cold coffee, the scattered tools, the triumphant gleam in her father's eyes. "You figured something out," she said. It wasn't a question. Tom demonstrated the revised lift system, now working in perfect synchronization with the modified controls. The entire assembly moved like a choreographed dance, each part flowing naturally into the next. Maya watched, then smiled. "It's beautiful, Dad, like something from a science fiction movie, but elegant. Your grandfather used to say that the best engineering solutions look obvious once you find them," Tom replied, stifling a yawn. "The trick is getting there." He looked at his daughter, suddenly serious. "Maya, about the shop's problems, Dad, look," Maya interrupted, pointing to the window. The rising sun had caught the Mercedes's silver paint, making it glow like liquid mercury. The new lift mechanism cast artistic shadows across the shop floor, its curves echoing the car's classic lines. In that moment, Tom felt a renewed surge of determination. The bank might own the building, but they couldn't take away what really mattered: the knowledge passed down through generations, the ability to solve problems with creativity and care, the satisfaction of making something work exactly right. Sarah would be visiting later that day for another progress check. For the first time in weeks, Tom was actually excited to show her the improvements. Sometimes, the best solutions came when you were down to your last options, when you had nothing left to lose except your commitment to doing things right. The old family photo sat in its worn frame on Tom's desk, edges softened by time. His father stood proudly in front of the shop, one arm around Tom's mother, the other hand resting on young Tom's shoulder. The sign behind them was freshly painted then, the ampersand standing straight and true. Sarah noticed the photo during her afternoon visit, her eyes lingering on the happy family scene. "You look about Maya's age there," she observed softly. 15, Tom confirmed. "Just starting to learn my way around an engine." Dad said I had the touch, could feel when something wasn't right just by listening. "Maya has that same gift," Sarah said, watching the teenager across the shop as she helped a customer understand their maintenance schedule. "She explains things the way you do, making the complex feel simple." Tom smiled, pride warming his voice. "She's smarter than I ever was, already talking about engineering programs for college." His smile faltered slightly. "Assuming we can figure out how to afford it." Sarah's fingers tightened imperceptibly on her wheelchair's armrest. The urge to reveal her identity, to solve his problems with a single phone call, was almost overwhelming. Instead, she steered the conversation back to safer ground. "Tell me about your father," she said. "He must have been an extraordinary teacher." "He believed in doing things right, no matter how long it took," Tom said, picking up the photo, his expression distant. "He used to say that every car that came through our doors carried someone's dreams with it. It might be a family's only transportation or a restored classic that reminded someone of their youth. Our job wasn't just fixing machines, it was keeping dreams alive." "Like what you're doing with the Mercedes," Sarah said quietly. Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air between them, understanding, perhaps, or recognition of a shared truth. "My father taught me to drive in a car like this," Sarah found herself saying, the memory rising unbidden. "He said the Mercedes wasn't just about luxury, it was about engineering excellence, about creating something that would last." She stopped, worried she'd said too much, but Tom just nodded. "That's why these modifications have to be perfect, not just functional, but worthy of the car's heritage and worthy of giving you back that connection." Maya approached, carrying a stack of invoices. "Dad, I organized today's paperwork, but," she hesitated, glancing at Sarah. "It's okay," Tom assured her. "Ms. Sarah knows things are tight right now." Maya set down the invoices. The parts supplier called again, and Mr. Peterson's check bounced. He was so embarrassed, said his pension payment was delayed. "Tell him not to worry about it," Tom said immediately. "We'll work something out." Sarah watched this exchange, seeing the weight of responsibility on both their shoulders. Maya was too young to carry such adult concerns, yet she bore them with remarkable grace. "Maya," Sarah said suddenly, "would you be interested in learning more about adaptive vehicle engineering? I have some experience from my teaching days." The girl's eyes lit up. "Really? That would be amazing. I've been researching accessibility modifications ever since Dad started this project." What followed was an hour-long discussion that revealed more than Sarah intended. Her technical knowledge slipped out naturally as she explained concepts, drawing on engineering principles she shouldn't have known as a former teacher. She caught Tom watching her thoughtfully several times but couldn't bring herself to maintain her facade of ignorance, not when Maya's genuine enthusiasm for learning reminded her so much of herself at that age. As the afternoon light faded, Sarah prepared to leave. Tom walked her to her van, his hand resting briefly on her wheelchair's handle. "Thank you," he said simply, "for spending time with Maya. She doesn't get many chances to explore her interests with someone who really understands." Sarah looked up at him, seeing the gentleness behind his strength, the wisdom behind his skill. "Thank you," she replied, "for reminding me what it's like to share knowledge just for the joy of it." They stayed there a moment longer than necessary, both aware of words unspoken, truths unhidden. The shop's old sign creaked gently in the evening breeze, casting long shadows across the parking lot, like time itself stretching between them. The morning of the test drive dawned clear and cool. Tom had been at the shop since before sunrise, checking and rechecking every modification on the Mercedes. The custom steering controls gleamed under the shop lights, each component polished to perfection. The hydraulic lift system stood ready, its elegant curves a testament to countless hours of refinement. Maya helped him clear the shop floor, creating a clean space for the first transfer test. "Everything looks perfect, Dad," she assured him, noting his nervous adjustments to already perfect alignments. "Perfect on paper isn't the same as perfect in practice," Tom replied, his father's words coming back to him. "The real test is when theory meets reality." Sarah arrived precisely at 9, James parking her van in its usual spot. Tom noticed she was dressed differently today, a crisp blouse and tailored slacks instead of her usual casual attire. Something about her seemed more focused, more present. "Good morning," she said, wheeling herself into the shop. Her eyes went straight to the Mercedes, taking in the completed modifications. "It looks incredible." Tom walked her through each new feature, explaining the controls and safety systems. Sarah listened intently, asking detailed questions that revealed her deep understanding of mechanical systems. He'd stopped being surprised by her technical knowledge, accepting it as part of the mystery that surrounded her. "The lift system operates in 3 stages," he demonstrated, activating the mechanism. "Each movement is cushioned hydraulically to ensure smooth transitions. The controls are fully adjustable to find your perfect position." Sarah wheeled closer to the driver's door, her expression a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. "How do we start?" "First transfer test," Tom said gently. "We'll take it slow, make sure everything's comfortable before adding any vehicle operations." He positioned himself nearby, ready to assist but careful to give her space and dignity. Maya stood back, holding her breath as Sarah aligned her wheelchair with the lift system. The first activation was flawless. The lift moved with liquid grace, exactly as Tom had envisioned during those late-night engineering sessions. Sarah's wheelchair locked securely into position, and the transfer platform extended with precision. But as Sarah began to shift herself toward the driver's seat, she hesitated. Tom saw a flash of something in her eyes, not fear exactly, but memory. Her hands gripped the transfer supports tightly. "The last time I was in this car," she said softly, almost to herself, "was the day of the accident." The shop fell silent. Tom moved closer, not touching, but present. "Sarah," he said, dropping the formal "Ms." for the first time, "we can stop any time. This is your journey, at your pace." She shook her head, determination replacing uncertainty. "No, I need to do this. I need to," she took a deep breath. "I need to find myself again." The transfer resumed. Sarah moved with practiced efficiency, but Tom could see the emotional weight of each motion. When she finally settled into the driver's seat, her hands found the custom controls naturally, as if they'd been designed specifically for her grip, which, Tom realized, they had been. "How does it feel?" he asked, watching her explore the new interface. "Like coming home," Sarah whispered. Her fingers traced the steering wheel, the modified controls, the familiar dashboard. "But home with new furniture." Tom smiled at the analogy. "Want to start her up?" Sarah's hand moved to the key, then paused. "Tom, thank you, not just for the modifications, but for understanding what this means." He nodded, recognizing the depth of trust she was showing. "Ready when you are." The Mercedes engine came to life with a purr. Sarah's hands moved to the controls, testing the resistance, feeling how the systems responded to her touch. Tom watched carefully, noting every reaction, every micro-adjustment she made. The balance is perfect, she said, surprising him with her technical assessment. The force ratios, the return springs, it's exactly what I would have. She caught herself, but Tom filed away another piece of the puzzle that was Sarah. They spent the next hour making minor adjustments, fine-tuning the controls to her preferences. Sarah's confidence grew visibly with each successful operation. By the time they were ready for the first actual drive test, she was sitting straighter, her movements more assured. The parking lot is all clear, Maya reported, returning from a safety check. Ready for the maiden voyage? Sarah looked at Tom, a new light in her eyes. Will you ride with me? Just in case. Wouldn't miss it, he replied, moving to the passenger seat. As he settled in, he caught a faint scent of something familiar, the same perfume his mother used to wear, subtle and elegant, another small detail that didn't quite fit with Sarah's supposed background. But as the Mercedes slowly moved forward under her control, Tom pushed aside his questions. This moment wasn't about mysteries or revelations, it was about watching someone reclaim a piece of themselves, one careful movement at a time. The bank foreclosure notice landed on Tom's desk like a physical blow, final warning. 72-hour notice of property seizure. The words blurred before his eyes as he read them again, hoping somehow they'd change. They didn't. Outside his office window, the morning sun caught the shop's sign, highlighting the worn edges and faded paint that he'd been meaning to touch up for years. 3 generations of Martinez men had worked under that sign, now it would end with him. The phone rang, Eddie, his parts supplier. Tom let it go to voicemail. He already knew what the message would say, the special orders for Sarah's Mercedes had pushed his credit past its limit, no more parts would be coming without payment in full. Maya found him still staring at the notice an hour later. Dad, Mrs. Henderson is here for her oil change, and Mr. Peterson wanted to know if, she stopped, seeing his expression. What's wrong? He tried to shield her from the paper, but she was too quick. Her face paled as she read it. 72 hours. But that's not enough time to. Maya, Tom's voice was gentle but firm, I need you to go home and start packing up the apartment. Focus on the important things, photos, documents, your mom's memory box. No, Maya's chin lifted, so like her mother in that moment it made his heart ache. We're not giving up. There has to be something we can do. The shop phone rang again, this time Roy from the bank. Tom, I'm calling as a friend. The regional manager is coming tomorrow to oversee the property assessment. If you can show some significant payment or a concrete business plan, I understand, Tom said quietly. Thank you for everything, Roy. He spent the morning working through his regular appointments, trying to maintain a brave face for his longtime customers. Each familiar car that rolled into the shop felt like saying goodbye to an old friend, Mr. Peterson's Buick, Mrs. Henderson's Volvo, young Carlo's beat-up Honda that Tom had kept running on more goodwill than paid repairs. By afternoon, word had spread through the small community. People started dropping by, not for repairs, just to talk, to share memories, to thank him. Some pressed envelopes into his hands, others offered leads on potential investors. The gestures touched him deeply, but the numbers were simply too large to overcome with community goodwill alone. Sarah was scheduled for another test drive that evening. Tom considered canceling, the lift system was working perfectly now, and he couldn't justify ordering the few remaining parts he needed. But something made him keep the appointment. Maybe he owed her an explanation for why her project would remain unfinished. He was cleaning up the shop, preparing to face her, when Maya burst in from the office. Dad, come quick. You need to see this. Tom followed her to the small TV they kept in the waiting area. A news report was showing footage of a sleek corporate headquarters. Thorne Technologies' revolutionary new adaptive vehicle control system announced today. The company's CEO, Sarah Thorne, demonstrated the prototype personally. The image switched to a woman in an elegant wheelchair speaking to reporters outside a modern research facility. Tom's coffee cup slipped from suddenly numb fingers, shattering on the floor. It was Sarah, his Sarah, but transformed, designer clothes, professional styling, radiating corporate authority. She was demonstrating a control system eerily similar to the one he designed for her Mercedes. The patent was filed 3 weeks ago, Maya said quietly, holding up a printout of the technical documents. Right after you finished the prototype. Tom felt the floor shift beneath his feet. Every lingering question about Sarah suddenly made horrible sense, her technical knowledge, her careful vagueness about her past, the subtle hints of refinement she couldn't quite hide. She used us, Maya whispered. Used you, stole your design too. No, Tom's voice surprised them both with its firmness. There has to be more to it. Sarah wouldn't, but he couldn't finish the thought. Did he really know Sarah at all, the woman who had shared technical insights with Maya, who had trusted him to restore her independence, who had looked at him with such genuine appreciation? Was any of that real? The bank notice seemed to burn in his pocket, 72 hours, his life's work, his father's legacy, everything he built about to vanish. And now this betrayal, cutting deeper than any financial wound. The Mercedes sat silently in its bay, gleaming under the shop lights. In its reflection, Tom saw not just his own failures, but the shattered pieces of something else he hadn't even realized he was building: trust, connection, maybe even love. Sarah arrived at the shop that evening in a different vehicle, a glossy black Tesla adapted with state-of-the-art controls. Her wheelchair was no longer the simple model Tom had grown familiar with, but a sophisticated carbon fiber design that probably cost more than his annual income. James, her assistant, looked uncomfortable as he helped her down the vehicle's built-in ramp. Tom stood in the shop doorway, Maya slightly behind him. The setting sun cast long shadows across the parking lot, the old sign creaking softly in the evening breeze. I can explain, Sarah said quietly, wheeling herself forward. She pulled an ID card from her jacket, not the worn teacher's ID she'd shown before, but a sleek corporate badge. My name is Sarah Thorne. I'm the CEO of, We know, Maya interrupted, her young voice tight with hurt. We saw you on the news, saw your patent filing too. Sarah flinched at the accusation in Maya's tone. The patent isn't what you think. If you'll let me, why? Tom's single word cut through the tension. He hadn't moved from the doorway, his expression unreadable in the gathering dusk. Sarah wheeled closer, her practiced corporate poise cracking. Because I needed to know if it was still possible, real human connection, genuine kindness, innovation driven by heart instead of profit margins. She gestured at the Tesla behind her. I have 100 engineers who could have modified a car for me using the latest technology and unlimited budgets, but I wanted something else, something real. Real? Maya stepped forward. Was any of it real? The teaching stories, the physics lessons, were you laughing at us the whole time? Maya, Tom said softly, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. To Sarah, he said, come inside. We should talk. The shop felt different in the evening light. The Mercedes sat silently in its bay, a chrome and steel witness to everything that had passed between them. Sarah's eyes were drawn to the family photo on Tom's desk, still in its worn frame. I never lied about what matters, she said. My father really did teach me to drive in a Mercedes like this one. He really did die in the accident that took my mobility. Everything I shared about loving mechanics, about wanting to drive again, that was all true. And the patent? Tom's voice was carefully neutral. Sarah reached into her bag and withdrew a thick envelope. It's in your name, Tom. You and Martinez and Father Auto Repair are listed as the primary inventors. Thorne Technologies is registered only as a licensing partner. She placed the envelope on his desk. I filed it to protect you, to make sure no one could steal your innovation before we could discuss a proper partnership. Tom didn't touch the envelope. Partnership? Your design is brilliant, Tom, the way you solved the hydraulic flow issues, the intuitive control interface. It's years ahead of what my R&D team developed. But more than that, you understood what it meant, not just technically, but emotionally, what it means to give someone back their independence. She wheeled closer to Maya. And everything we shared about engineering, about physics, that was real too. You reminded me of myself at your age, of how it felt to discover the beauty in mechanical solutions. Maya's expression softened slightly, but she still looked to her father for guidance. Tom finally moved, picking up the patent documents. As he read, Sarah continued speaking, her corporate polish falling away completely. I came here looking for something money couldn't buy. She gestured around the shop, taking in the tools, the memories, the legacy of 3 generations. I found authenticity, innovation driven by compassion instead of profit, a father teaching his daughter the same values my father taught me. She pulled out another envelope, thicker than the first. The bank foreclosure, the parts supplier issues, I can solve those with a single phone call, but that's not why I'm here. She placed the envelope beside the patent papers. I'm here to offer a real partnership. Funding to expand Martinez and father into a specialized adaptive vehicle center, your expertise, your values, your name on the door, my company's resources and distribution network. And if I say no? Tom asked quietly. Then the patent still belongs to you. Do with it what you want, sell it, develop it yourself, lock it in a drawer. It's your choice, Sarah said, her hands gripping her wheelchair's armrests. But I hope you'll say yes, not for the money, but because together we could help thousands of people regain their independence. We could make your father's legacy reach further than he ever dreamed possible. The shop fell silent, except for the soft ticking of cooling engines. Through the windows, the old sign's shadow stretched across the floor like a bridge between past and future. Tom looked at the papers in his hands, then at his daughter, and finally at Sarah. You should have told me the truth from the beginning, he said simply. I know, Sarah whispered. I needed to know if someone could see me, the real me, not the CEO, not the billionaire, not the woman in the wheelchair, just me. The old newspaper article lay between them on Tom's desk, yellowed with age. The headline read, Tech Pioneer Richard Thorne and Daughter in Fatal Collision. Below it, a photo showed a younger Sarah standing beside her father in front of Thorne Technologies' first research facility, both beaming with shared pride and purpose. It was supposed to be a celebration drive, Sarah said softly, her fingers hovering over her father's image. We just completed our first major adaptive technology project. Dad insisted on taking the Mercedes, said proper achievements deserved proper style. A sad smile crossed her face. The other driver was texting, didn't even see us until, Tom studied the photo, seeing the echo of his own relationship with his father in Sarah and Richard's expressions. My dad used to say that cars carry our stories with them, every ding, every repair, every modification, they're all chapters in someone's life. Maya, who had been quietly listening from her perch on the workbench, spoke up. Is that why you kept the Mercedes, even after? Sarah nodded. It was the last place I saw him alive. He was conscious at the end, held my hand, told me to remember what really matters. Her voice grew distant with memory. The paramedics had to cut us out. I watched the dashboard crumple around us, thinking about all the engineering that went into trying to keep us safe. That's why you became interested in adaptive technology, Tom realized, not just because of your own needs. Dad always said, engineering without purpose is just mechanics. He built Thorne Technologies to solve real problems, to help real people, Sarah said, her corporate polish completely gone now, leaving only raw honesty. But somewhere along the way, after his death, it became about market share and profit margins, until I found this place. She gestured around the shop, taking in its lived-in character, its history written in tools, oil stains, and memories. You reminded me what it was like when Dad and I worked in our garage, solving problems just because they needed solving. When I saw how you approached the Mercedes modifications, not as a technical challenge, but as a way to give someone back their dignity. You could have just told me the truth, Tom said, but his voice had lost its edge of hurt. Could I? Sarah asked. When was the last time someone treated you differently because of your bank account or looked past Maya's abilities because of your financial struggles? She smiled sadly. Money changes everything it touches, Tom, usually not for the better. Maya slid off the workbench and approached Sarah's wheelchair. The physics problems we worked on, you weren't just humoring me, were you? You really love teaching. It was the best part of my week, Sarah admitted. Watching you understand complex principles, seeing that same excitement I used to feel, it reminded me who I used to be, who I still want to be. Tom picked up the partnership proposal, turning it over in his hands. And this, what's this really about? It's about taking what we created here, your innovation, your values, your way of solving problems, and making it available to people who need it, not as a luxury product, but as a basic right, Sarah said, her voice growing passionate. Think about it, Tom. How many other people are out there dreaming of driving again? How many small shops could become specialized adaptive centers using your designs and methods? She paused, then added softly, and maybe it's about something else too, about two people who lost their fathers but kept their dreams alive, about finding someone who sees you for who you are, not what you own or what you've lost. The evening light filtered through the shop windows, casting warm patterns across the Mercedes silver paint. Tom looked at his daughter, seeing the spark of possibility in her eyes. He thought about his father's words about keeping dreams alive, about doing things right no matter the cost. If we did this, he said slowly, the shop stays in my name. We keep serving our regular customers, no corporate takeover, no changing who we are or how we work. Wouldn't dream of it, Sarah replied. Martinez and Father isn't just a name, it's a philosophy, one that Thorn Technologies needs to remember. Maya looked between them, hope beginning to replace hurt in her expression. Dad, does this mean we're not losing the shop? Tom met Sarah's eyes, seeing in them the same mix of professional respect and personal connection that had drawn him from the beginning. No, Maya, I think it means we're about to make it everything your grandfather always dreamed it could be. The funding and business plan spread across Tom's workbench was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Detailed architectural renderings showed Martinez and Father transformed into a state-of-the-art adaptive vehicle center, but with its classic character carefully preserved. The old sign remained, restored but unchanged, a testament to the shop's heritage. The initial investment would modernize your equipment and clear all existing debt, Sarah explained, pointing to the financial projections. But the real opportunity is here. She indicated a section titled Training and Development Center. You want to teach other mechanics? Tom asked, studying the plans. I want you to teach them, Sarah corrected. Your approach to adaptive modifications is unique, Tom. You consider the whole person, not just the technical requirements. That's something that can't be learned from a manual. Maya leaned over the drawings, her eyes bright with excitement. Look, a proper engineering station with 3D modeling capabilities. And this space here could be a customer consultation area where people can discuss their specific needs. The shop would serve as a prototype, Sarah continued. Once we perfect the training program here, we can help other independent garages expand into adaptive modifications, create a network of certified centers, all operating with your methodology. Tom ran his hand over the architectural plans, feeling the texture of possibility beneath his fingers. And my regular customers, the Petersons and Hendersons who've trusted us for generations? They stay, Sarah said firmly. That's non-negotiable. Martinez and Father maintains its identity as a community shop, we just expand its capabilities. She smiled. After all, that's how your father built this business, one relationship at a time. James, who had been quietly taking notes, spoke up. The legal team has drafted a partnership agreement that protects both parties' interests. You'd retain full operational control of the shop, Mr. Martinez. Thorn Technologies would provide funding, technical support, and distribution networks. Tom looked at Sarah. And your role in all this? Partner and first customer, she replied. The Mercedes project proved we work well together. I'd like to continue that collaboration, developing new solutions for other drivers with different needs. She paused, then added softly, if you'll trust me again. Maya had moved to the Mercedes, her hand resting on its perfectly curved fender. We could help so many people, Dad, just like you helped Ms. Thorne. Sarah, the CEO insisted. Please, I've had enough of pretense. Tom picked up the partnership agreement, its legal language a stark contrast to the elegant simplicity of his father's old ledgers. This is a lot to process. Everything would change. Not everything, Sarah countered. Your values, your expertise, your connection to this community, those stay exactly as they are. What changes is your ability to reach more people who need your help. She wheeled herself to the Mercedes, joining Maya. When I first came here, I was looking for something I thought I'd lost, the pure joy of engineering solutions, of solving problems not because they're profitable, but because they matter. She looked at Tom. I found that, and something more. I found someone who reminded me of who I used to be before spreadsheets and board meetings buried the engineer in me. Tom thought about his father, about the lessons learned at his side, about doing things right, about keeping dreams alive. He looked at Maya, seeing in her eyes the same passion for problem-solving that had driven him at her age. The training center, he said slowly, it would need someone who understands both the technical and human aspects, someone who can teach others to see beyond the mechanics. Sarah nodded. Someone like Maya, perhaps, after she finishes her engineering degree, of course. Maya's head snapped up. Me? The scholarship program is outlined on page 12, James mentioned, hiding a smile. Tom felt something shift inside him, not the ground crumbling as it had seemed to lately, but rather pieces falling into place. He picked up his father's old mechanical pencil, its brass surface worn smooth by generations of dreams and determination. We'll need to review every detail, he said, make sure we're not losing sight of what Martinez and father has always stood for. Of course, Sarah agreed. We'll take it step by step, just like building the perfect lift system. The evening light caught the Mercedes' chrome trim, sending reflections dancing across the shop walls. Tom watched them, remembering all the times he'd seen similar patterns as a boy, learning at his father's side. Now it was his turn to take those lessons and build something new. Maya, he called, get your notebook. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. His daughter's smile was brighter than any blueprint's promise of the future. The architect's plans became reality with remarkable speed, but Tom insisted on keeping the shop open throughout the renovation. Our regular customers still need us, he'd said, and Sarah had agreed without hesitation. So they worked in phases, transforming the space piece by piece while maintaining the heart of Martinez and father. The first major change was the installation of the new lift system. Tom watched as modern equipment was carefully positioned alongside his father's old tools, like branches being grafted onto a sturdy tree. The contractors, hand-picked by Sarah, showed the same respect for the shop's heritage that she did. We're ready for the sign, the project manager announced one morning. Tom stepped outside to watch as craftsmen carefully removed the old Martinez and father sign, its weathered surface telling decades of stories. Don't worry, Sarah said, appearing beside him in her wheelchair. It's just being restored, not replaced. Some things shouldn't change. The sign returned 3 days later, its original colors brought back to life but its character preserved. The crooked ampersand had been straightened, but the hand-painted quality remained. Below it, elegant new lettering read, Certified Adaptive Vehicle Center. Inside, the transformation was more dramatic. The new diagnostic equipment gleamed alongside Tom's traditional tools. A dedicated design station occupied what had been empty storage space, its 3D modeling capabilities already proving invaluable for visualizing custom modifications. Maya spent every free moment exploring the new technology, her natural aptitude making her an unofficial bridge between the old and new ways of doing things. Tom often found her explaining the shop's traditional methods to Sarah's technical team or demonstrating new equipment to their longtime customers. "Mr. Peterson, look," she called out one morning, showing the elderly man a 3D rendering of his beloved Buick. "We can model any modifications before we make them, ensure everything works perfectly with your car's original design." The old man peered at the display, clearly impressed. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said to Tom. "He always said you had to keep up with the times while keeping hold of what matters." The customer consultation area proved particularly successful. Where once people had awkwardly described their needs across a cluttered counter, now they could sit comfortably and discuss their requirements in detail. The space featured examples of various adaptive controls and modifications, helping clients understand their options. "It's not just about showing what we can do," Tom explained to a reporter from the local paper. "It's about helping people see possibilities they might not have imagined." Sarah spent more time at the shop as the transformation progressed, often working alongside Tom on particularly challenging modifications. Their collaboration had evolved into something seamless, her theoretical knowledge combining perfectly with his practical experience. "Watch this," she said one afternoon, demonstrating a refinement to their original control system. "If we adjust the response curve here," her hands moved confidently over the controls, the years of corporate leadership falling away to reveal the engineer underneath. Tom noticed she'd stopped using her deluxe wheelchair during these working sessions, preferring the simple model she'd first arrived in. When he commented on it, she smiled. "This one reminds me of who I am in this shop, just another problem solver trying to make things work better." The Mercedes remained in its place of honor, now serving as both a testament to their partnership and a teaching tool for other mechanics learning adaptive modification techniques. Tom had insisted on keeping it as their prototype, and Sarah had agreed immediately. "Besides," she'd said, running her hand along its gleaming flank, "this car has earned its place here. It brought us together, didn't it?" The community's response to the changes exceeded everyone's expectations. Word spread quickly about the shop's new capabilities, bringing in clients from surrounding states, but it was the reactions of their regular customers that meant the most to Tom. Mrs. Henderson summed it up best after bringing her Volvo in for its regular service. "It's different," she said, looking around at the modernized space, "but it still feels like Martinez and father. It still feels like home." One evening, after the last customer had left, Tom found Sarah sitting in the Mercedes, her hands resting lightly on the modified controls. The setting sun through the windows cast the same patterns he'd watched all his life, but now they fell across new equipment and fresh possibilities. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, noting her contemplative expression. "The opposite," she replied. "I was just thinking about what our fathers would say if they could see this, your dad's practical wisdom combined with my father's technological vision. They'd probably say we're both stubborn enough to be right," Tom smiled. "And maybe that's what makes this work." Sarah laughed, the sound echoing naturally in the transformed space. "A perfectionist mechanic and a billionaire engineer walk into a garage," she began. "Sounds like the beginning of a pretty good story," Tom finished, looking around at everything they'd built together, old and new, tradition and innovation, all finding their perfect balance. The first customer testimonial arrived in a handwritten letter, its pages filled with careful script. "For 20 years after my accident, I thought I'd never drive again," it read. "Martinez and father didn't just modify my car, they restored my independence. How do you put a price on freedom?" Tom pinned the letter to the shop's new customer board, right next to his father's old service guidelines. The contrast between the worn, oil-stained paper and the modern display somehow captured everything they were trying to achieve. But success brought its own challenges. The waiting list for adaptive modifications grew longer each week, and Tom found himself struggling to balance the specialized work with regular maintenance jobs. He refused to turn away his longtime customers, even as the demand for adaptive services increased. "We need to hire more mechanics," Sarah said one morning, reviewing the schedule. "At least 2, maybe 3. Tom looked up from the carburetor he was rebuilding for Mr. Peterson's Buick. Finding people with the right skills is one thing. Finding people with the right attitude, that's different. You can teach skills, Sarah replied. Values, understanding, the ability to see the person behind the technical requirements, that's what we need to look for. They found their first new hire in an unexpected place. Carlo, the teenager who had watched Tom work on the Mercedes, introduced them to his older sister, Elena. She had been working at a corporate chain garage, her natural talent hidden behind rigid corporate procedures. "My brother told me how you modified Ms. Thorne's car," Elena said during her interview, "how you made it beautiful, not just functional. That's the kind of work I want to do." The second addition came through Sarah's connections, a former military mechanic named Marcus, who had specialized in rehabilitating vehicles for wounded veterans. His experience proved invaluable, but more importantly, he shared Tom's philosophy of taking time to understand each client's specific needs. Maya took on the role of training coordinator, creating detailed documentation of their procedures while maintaining the human touch that made Martinez and Father special. Her natural teaching ability emerged as she helped the new team members understand not just the how, but the why of their approach. The lift mechanism isn't just about angles and hydraulics, Tom overheard her explaining to Elena one day. It's about dignity, about making someone feel like they're just another driver, not a problem to be solved. But not everything ran smoothly. Some corporate clients, referred through Thorne Technologies, expected instant results and standardized solutions. They didn't understand why each modification required extensive consultation and custom work. "We can't rush this," Tom insisted during a particularly tense meeting with a luxury car dealership representative. "Every client is different, every solution needs to be personalized." Sarah backed him completely. "If you want assembly line modifications, there are other shops for that. Martinez and Father does things differently." The pressure to expand faster, to standardize their processes, to become more efficient, was constant. Tom sometimes found Sarah in the shop late at night, working on paperwork, fighting her own corporate board to maintain their vision. "Maybe they're right," she said one evening, exhaustion clear in her voice. "Maybe we can't scale personal attention and customized solutions." Tom wheeled her away from the desk and toward the Mercedes. "Remember your first test drive? How it felt when everything worked exactly right, when the car became an extension of yourself?" Sarah's hand found the familiar controls, a smile touching her lips. "Like coming home. That's what we're giving people, not just modified vehicles, but a piece of themselves back," Tom said, gesturing to the wall of customer letters, each one telling a story of renewed independence. "You can't standardize that." The shop's new training program began to take shape, combining technical expertise with the human understanding that made their work special. Other independent garages sent mechanics to learn, and Tom found himself sharing not just technical skills, but his father's wisdom about keeping dreams alive. Elena proved particularly adept at the careful balance between innovation and tradition. One afternoon, she showed Tom a modification she'd designed for a client with limited hand mobility. "I studied the way you integrated the controls in Ms. Thorne's Mercedes," she explained, "how you made them feel natural, like they belonged. Then I thought about how this client holds his coffee cup, the specific way he grips things, and designed around that." Tom smiled, recognizing his father's philosophy in her words. The shop was growing, changing, becoming something new, but its heart, its essential purpose, remained unchanged. They weren't just fixing cars. They were helping people rebuild their lives, one careful modification at a time. The local newspaper article captured it perfectly, "Martinez and Father, where innovation meets compassion." The front page story featured a photo of Tom and Sarah working together on an adaptive steering system, their heads bent close in concentration, the shop's restored sign visible in the background. "It's not about the technology," Tom told the reporter. "It's about listening to each person's story, understanding their needs, and finding solutions that feel natural to them." The article went on to describe their unique approach, highlighting how they'd maintained the shop's community roots while expanding its capabilities. The story caught the attention of the adaptive vehicle community nationwide. Soon, other publications wanted to feature their work, but it was a visit from Dr. Harrison, head of rehabilitation at the Regional Medical Center, that truly showed the impact they were making. "I've been working with patients for 30 years, the doctor said, watching Elena demonstrate their latest modification techniques. "I've never seen adaptive vehicles that so perfectly match each individual's capabilities and needs. Your work isn't just about transportation, it's about restoration of self." Sarah, who had been quietly observing from her wheelchair, spoke up. "That's all Tom, he taught us to see beyond the mechanical challenges." "No," Tom corrected, "that's us, your engineering expertise combined with our practical experience. It works because we both understand what it means to honor someone's dignity while solving their problems." The doctor's visit led to a formal partnership with the Rehabilitation Center. Soon, occupational therapists were consulting with them during the modification design process, creating solutions that integrated perfectly with their patients' therapy goals. Maya thrived in this collaborative environment. Her natural ability to bridge the technical and human aspects of their work made her an invaluable liaison between the medical professionals and the shop's team. She started developing a standardized assessment process that still allowed for personalized solutions. "Look at this," she said one afternoon, showing Tom and Sarah a tablet-based evaluation system she'd created. "It helps us document each client's specific needs and preferences, but it's conversation-based, not just checkboxes. We're building a knowledge base while keeping the human connection." The success stories accumulated: a former concert pianist, her hands damaged by arthritis, driving again with custom-designed controls that drew on her musical muscle memory; a teenager with cerebral palsy taking his first solo drive in a car modified to work with his unique movement patterns. Each solution was different, each one perfectly tailored to its user. Word spread through the disability community. People started traveling from other states, even other countries, to consult with them. The waiting list grew longer, but Tom insisted on maintaining their standards. "We're not an assembly line," he reminded his team during a staff meeting. "Every person who comes through that door has a story, and our job is to understand it before we start turning wrenches." Sarah's corporate board finally began to understand the value of their approach. The data was undeniable, their client satisfaction rates were unprecedented, and the innovative solutions developed at Martinez and Father were advancing the entire field of adaptive vehicle technology. They wanted quick profits, Sarah told Tom after a board meeting. "We showed them something better, sustainable success built on genuine human connection." The Mercedes that had started it all became something of a legend in the adaptive vehicle community. Clients would ask to see it, drawing inspiration from its elegant solutions. Tom kept it in perfect condition, occasionally letting Sarah take it for a drive when she needed to remind herself how far they'd come. One quiet evening, after the day's work was done, Tom found Sarah sitting in the Mercedes, running her hands over the controls they'd designed together. "Remember when you first came here?" he asked, leaning against the car's door. Pretending to be just another customer, she smiled. "I was looking for something authentic in a world of corporate polish. I found more than I bargained for." "We both did," Tom said, looking around the shop at the blend of traditional tools and cutting-edge technology, at the wall of customer testimonials, at the restored sign that still proclaimed Martinez and Father to the world. "Dad used to say that every car carries dreams with it. I never understood just how right he was until we started this." Through the windows, they could see Elena working late, teaching Carlos some basic diagnostic techniques while he waited for his sister's shift to end. Maya was in the office, videoconferencing with the medical team about a particularly challenging case. The shop hummed with purpose, with innovation, with humanity. "We're not just fixing cars anymore," Sarah said softly. "We're fixing broken pieces of people's lives." "No," Tom corrected her again, smiling. "We're giving them the tools to fix themselves. That's always been the real magic of Martinez and Father." The expansion blueprints covered Tom's workbench, showing ambitious plans for the future, not just for Martinez and Father, but for a network of adaptive vehicle centers across the country. Each one would carry the Martinez philosophy: personal attention, innovative solutions, and unwavering respect for every client's dignity. 5 centers in the first year, Sarah explained, her wheelchair positioned beside Tom as they reviewed the plans. Each one partnered with an existing independent shop like we did here. We provide the training, technology, and certification, they maintain their local character and connections. Tom traced the proposed locations with his finger. And Maya's training program would be the foundation. She's already revolutionizing how we document and share knowledge. Sarah nodded. The way she combines technical expertise with emotional intelligence, it's exactly what we need to replicate our success. Maya had just been accepted into the engineering program at the State University with a full scholarship from Thorne Technologies, but her real education had already begun in the shop, where theory met practice every day. "Dad," she called from the customer consultation area, where she was working with a new client, "could you come look at something? I have an idea for Mrs. Jiang's modification, but I want your input." Tom watched his daughter confidently explain her concept, using the 3D modeling system to illustrate her points. She had her mother's grace and his father's intuitive understanding of mechanics, but more than that, she had developed her own unique ability to see both the technical and human dimensions of every challenge. The standard approach would be a left-hand control system, Maya explained, but notice how Mrs. Jiang naturally rests her right arm. If we modify the design this way, her hands moved over the controls, adjusting the virtual model. "Perfect," Tom said softly, seeing both the technical elegance and the human consideration in her solution. To Mrs. Jiang, he added, "You'll be working with the best engineer in training I know." Later that evening, after the clients had gone home and the day's shift had ended, Tom found Sarah in their shared office. No longer the cramped space it had once been, but still maintaining its comfortable, lived-in feel. She was reviewing applications from shops interested in joining their network. "How do we make sure they understand," she asked without looking up, "that this isn't just about installing equipment and following procedures?" Tom settled into the chair beside her desk, a chair that had gradually become his spot during their evening planning sessions. "We show them. Bring them here, let them see how we work, let them feel the difference it makes." Sarah set down the applications, turning to face him in the soft evening light. She looked more like the Sarah who had first come to his shop than the corporate CEO she showed the world. "We've built something remarkable here, haven't we?" "We have," Tom agreed. "Something our fathers would be proud of." The moment stretched between them, comfortable and full of unspoken understanding. Their partnership had evolved into something neither had expected, a shared vision that went beyond business, beyond innovation, beyond even their initial goals. Elena's voice from the shop floor broke the moment. She was working the evening shift, teaching Marcus some of the finer points of their custom control systems. The sounds of tools and quiet instruction filtered through the office windows, accompanied by the familiar scent of oil and metal. "I have a confession," Sarah said suddenly. "That first day, when I chose Martinez and father for the Mercedes modification, it wasn't just random chance. I'd read every review, studied every shop in